My name's Theo, 34, and I restore stone, mostly old brick and limestone facades the rest of the city has stopped noticing. It's slow work, chisel and patience, the kind of job nobody puts on a dating profile. I like that about it. I liked that a building could stand for 140 years because somebody cared enough to keep pointing the mortar. I met Nadia at a housewarming 2 winters ago. She sold real estate, all motion and momentum, the kind of person who filled a room by walking into it. I fell for her fast and stayed fallen for a long time, longer than I probably should have. From the beginning there was a name that came up more than it needed to, Julian. Her college boyfriend, the one who'd left for culinary school and never looked back, who now had his face on food blogs and a reputation for restaurants that opened to lines around the block. At first the comparisons felt harmless, the kind of thing exes mention once and let go. They didn't let go. When I landed my first big commission, restoring the clock tower on Aldermont Street, the kind of job that gets your name in the Historical Society newsletter, she nodded through dinner and then said, almost gently, "It's sweet, Theo." Julian opened his second location the same month he turned 30. I told her the clock tower would still be standing after both of Julian's restaurants had been forgotten. She laughed like I'd made a joke. It kept happening. A weekend trip I planned to the coast became a chance for her to mention the time Julian flew her to Lisbon on 48 hours' notice, a raise I got compared unfavorably to whatever margin Julian's investors were projecting. I told myself it was old wiring, leftover longing she hadn't finished unplugging. I was wrong about that, the way you're wrong about a crack in a foundation until the day it isn't small anymore. She ended it on a Tuesday, over a dinner I'd cooked to celebrate the tower job's final walkthrough. "I've been thinking about us," she said, setting her fork down with a kind of ceremony. Julian reached out. "He's been through a lot, and I don't know, Theo, it feels like unfinished business. You're stable." "That's real, I know it is. But stable isn't the same as alive." I asked her how long she'd been talking to him. "A few weeks," she said, like weeks were nothing. By the next morning she'd posted a photo of the two of them from years back, captioned about circling home to the one who mattered. I didn't call her. I didn't ask her to explain herself to our friends. I packed a bag, blocked her number, and let the lease run out under her name alone. I won't pretend the next few months were easy. I saw someone about it, which I'd never done before. A therapist who was kind enough to tell me, more than once, that being compared to a fantasy isn't a competition you're supposed to win. Late at night, I'd catch myself running the math on it anyway. How many years I'd given, how little it had apparently weighed against 48 hours in Lisbon. And then I'd make myself stop, because the math never came out anywhere useful. I threw myself into the workshop instead. Took on bigger jobs, hired a second apprentice, started keeping the kind of hours that leave no room for replaying old dinners. I brought on a structural engineer named Priya Anand as a consultant for the commissions that needed load calculations I couldn't eyeball. She was precise in a way I found steadying, the opposite of noise. She'd stand under a cracked lintel for 20 minutes without saying a word, just looking, and somehow that quiet did more for me than any pep talk would have. It was Priya who brought me the Aldermont job, not the tower this time, the old wool exchange 2 streets over, gutted and being rebuilt as a restaurant. Facade inspection, load-bearing review before they could pull the final occupancy permit. Routine work until I climbed the scaffold on the north wall and found hairline cracking above 3 window arches that the drawings said shouldn't exist yet, not for another decade at least. The permits told one story, the stone told another. Over 4 site visits I found spot repairs done with the wrong mix, structural steel swapped for a cheaper gauge, a load path rerouted around a beam that had clearly failed inspection once already, quietly, and never been fixed. Someone was racing to open before winter, before investors asked questions, before a deadline that had nothing to do with the building and everything to do with money. I wrote it all up. Priya co-signed it. We filed it with the city 3 weeks before the scheduled opening night. That was when Nadia showed up at the site, in a coat too warm for the season, waiting by the gate like she'd been standing there working up the nerve. "Theo, please. It's Julian's place." If the city holds the permit, he loses everything, and so do I. I moved in with him. I put money into this. I told her I didn't run the inspection to protect anyone's opening night. You could soften it, she said. One report. You've done bigger favors than that. I told her the report wasn't a favor to withhold. It was concrete holding up window arches over a room full of people. And I wasn't going to sign my name to a lie, so Julian could make a deadline. She called me small for it, said some things about stability being another word for cowardice. The same script from 2 years earlier with the names shuffled. You used to be easier than this, she said, and I almost laughed, because 2 years ago that would have landed. It didn't land now. I didn't raise my voice. I just told her the walkthrough was in 3 weeks, and the report would say what the stone told me, and she should probably talk to her own lawyer, not mine. She stood there a moment longer, waiting for me to soften, and when I didn't, she turned and walked back to her car without another word. The city didn't wait 3 weeks. On opening night, with the dining room full and a local news crew filming the ribbon cutting, the mortar over the east arch let go. No one hurt, just a spray of old dust and a chandelier swinging hard enough to send half the room outside. The fire marshal red-tagged the building before dessert service. By the time I heard about it, the story was already loose in the neighborhood. Permits pulled, a restaurateur's second act collapsing in front of a camera crew, a woman who'd bet everything on both. I didn't go down there to watch. Priya and I were closing out a smaller job across town when my phone started lighting up with people who wanted to know if I'd heard. I told them what I'd told the city 3 weeks earlier, and left it at that. Nadia called once, a few days later, her voice smaller than I remembered it. You knew, she said. You knew, and you let it happen. I told her I hadn't let anything happen. The wall had been failing since before either of us noticed the cracks, and I'd written down exactly what I found on time to the people whose job it was to read it. She didn't have anything to say back to that. I didn't need her to. I hung up, made dinner, and drove out to the coast that weekend, with Priya. The trip I'd once planned for someone who thought stable meant boring. The tower on Aldermont Street is still standing. It'll outlast both of them, and I don't think about that with any bitterness anymore. Just the quiet, ordinary satisfaction of work that was built to last.